Hello, hello, and welcome back to Bentek Systems, and welcome to this SCR Q&A. It's the directors Q&A session, so we've got all four of your directors here. So I'm Bentek, I'm your innovations director, and I do all the sort of techie stuff in the game, and also some stuff outside the game as well, working with Jive on the bots and things like that for the community. So I'll pass it over to the others to introduce themselves as well.
I'll go next. So hi everyone. If you don't know me, I'm Charlie RBX, and I am the managing director for SCR and the founder, I guess, of SCR as well. So for those of you that are new to SCR or the community, we started back in late 2017 as a community when I started the group, and we had about 5 people then. We have just a few more now, which is great to see, and I'm hoping lots of you have been able to join. But I am kind of responsible for the decision making at the top level. So what our roadmap is, what features we really want, and then working with the other directors who you will also be hearing from about how we make that happen, both on the game and in the community on Discord as well. So I'll pass over to HV next.
Hello, I'm HV. I am the operations director at SCR. Things I usually work with is usually trainings and operations related stuff relating to supervisors and managers. I usually am the guy who gets most of the complaints and then just forward it and seeing what changes could be made to make it better. So now I'll pass on to our community director.
Hello everyone, wherever you are in the world, if it's 4 a.m, the good commitment. I'm the Haz9 and I am the community director, recently rebranded. I work with a great team that seems to be ever shrinking, but with Dooge, who's also here to help us out, and I'm all about helping with drive engagement in the community, and we sort of try and make stuff happen. Events, Q&As was not really happening, but we also try and do just community interaction, try and make sure there's Boost Club stuff going on, and some of that I actually make happen. So
Yep, so that's all 4 of us, and then we've also got, as Hazard mentioned, we've got Dooge Moonbass here as well, who is going to be our question master, and he's going to ask us the questions that you send. So I'll pass over to him to explain how you can send your questions for us to answer.
Thank you, Bentek. Hello everyone, my name is Dooge, and I will be the question master, not the quiz master today, for this Q&A. So if you want to ask a question, you are more than welcome to go to the events lounge on the Discord server. You can also ask your questions in the YouTube chat or in the Twitch live chat. We will read them, and when possible we will answer them. We are expecting a lot of questions, so don't be afraid if we don't see your question immediately.
Perfect, right, I think we should just jump straight into it then. Lots of questions are coming in.
I see a lot of questions. The first question is from Not Benoit, or I'm sorry if I do not pronounce the names correctly. Let's see. Let's take a look. Any projects for some scenery on the Lane Stepford Road to Benton line?
So I think that's a question for me. So thanks for that question. I think it's I'm really glad that's come up, because this is something that I'm really proud of in this update. So as you will have seen from our sneak peeks, there was one particular one which the more observant of you may have noticed a sign with the letters LOE at the end of them in a sneak peek. I won't blatantly say it, but a lot of you know what that means in terms of upgrades. And you may notice the track layout there doesn't look like it does in the current game. So you will see lots more of that when the update comes out. But in short, we have completely overhauled the scenery on that, as it was, very boring straight section of track with what Bentek called the neatest farmer he'd ever come across when I originally made it, because it was just a row of squares of grass, and I didn't really like it enough. It was a bit boring, even though it was a nice section of high-speed track. So yeah, we've put a lot of work into that section. Variety of development. The Hazard9's been helping me with creating some new stuff down there, improving the stations. So yes, the scenery and the stations and the whole feel of that line, I think, has really changed in this update. So it's probably one of my favourite things. So I'm looking forward to you seeing that. So yes, a big overhaul coming.
Okay, then I have a question from Roblox Gaming 4003. When will all mobile players will be able to play Stepford County Railway on a mobile device?
Okay, so for mobile, we are working to improve that sort of with what we're doing with the trains. So what you've seen in terms of the new 707, the new 802, and some of the other things that we've got coming soon, those are kind of reducing the memory usage for our trains, because the reason why mobiles can't play at the moment is actually memory usage. So we're trying to reduce the amount of memory that our trains use, but obviously it'll take a while to replace all of the trains, and that's why we brought AeroWare onto the team as well, so that he can start turning some more of our trains into mesh along the way. But that will obviously have benefits for all devices, not just mobile, so it'll make it better on the slower PCs and things like that as well.
Thank you. A question from the Swedish rail fan. Will Whitney Green and Green Slate stations ever be remade to remove the tramlink tracks?
So we knew a tramlink question would have to come up in a Q&A. This is a really interesting one because we've been in two minds about this quite a lot, in that we've made it quite clear that tramlink is not something we are planning on anytime soon, if ever. It was a really nice idea at the time, which is why we built it in. But actually, trams in themselves is a whole complex game in itself. Trams work very differently to trains. They might not seem like it, but a whole different signaling system. And actually, do we really want to retrofit another game right on top of our own? So there's loads of complex reasons why trams aren't ideal. That said, I do feel personally, and a lot of the team agree, that the tram tracks and that area along Green Slade to Whitney Green, it's just something unique. And I think that's what's really important for me with SCR, is that if every line is the same, they're all two tracks, the platforms all look the same, the stations might be a bit different, but so it just doesn't feel right. So we wanted something a bit unique. So yes, I know that by leaving the tram tracks in, it feels like we're teasing people that they are coming back. I can't say they never will, but the reality is it's not something practical that we're looking at anytime soon. But I do really like the aspect of having the tram tracks there for a bit of scenery variety. So we're not planning to remove them, even if we say trams will never happen. We're not planning to remove them tram tracks. We may one day make them look a bit disused or something, don't know yet, but I like that unique aspect, so you know you're on that line when you're driving down there. So a good question, but no plans to remove them anytime soon.
I don't know what happened there, but the next question is, where did you think that SCR would be when you started in 2017? What were your expectations? And when you take a look at where we are standing now?
I feel like all four of us should probably answer that question, because I think we all do very different things. So, for example, I mean, I'll start because I started SCR. So I originally made SCR in 2012. For those of you that don't know, it was a very, very, very basic game. At the time, I was quite happy with it. But just don't mind Mr. The Hazard 9 talking over me for a second. But it was a very basic game. There was loads of it never really got anywhere. And I just forgot about it for 5 years. And then I thought in 2017, actually in February, I believe, 2017, I started building it again. And a few friends of mine with me were really pushing for us to make it public. And I was like, I'm not making it public until it's something playable, because that was my worst trait, was making a game and never finishing it, but then making it public too soon. So we waited until it was one route complete that you could drive. And back then, it was great. I was like, wow, we're getting 10 people on it at the same time. That's amazing. Thinking, actually, that's quite popular for my games, having 10, 20 people on at once. Which many of you will be laughing at now, given how busy our servers are to this day. But I never expected SCR to take off anywhere near the way it did. When I joined Roblox in 2008-ish, I always wanted to have a game like this, that everyone played, and to be known within the community of Roblox. But now, we've it's amazing that I go all over Roblox, and people who aren't really even that interested in trains know who we are and know about our game. And the fact we're on the front page sometimes, and we're on there all the time on the Learn and Explore. I had no idea that SCR would ever get to where it is. And so, you know, whatever people think about how much we feel about the fame behind it, we've always just wanted to make a game that people enjoy. All of this extra stuff is great, and we love it, and we really like being able to actually make people smile and have a game they enjoy. But we do it because we enjoy it. But on that kind of note of community, and I'll let the Hazard 9 kind of see if he has anything to add to that first.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like, I sort of vaguely remember the game when the first edition happened, and for me, the fun. And back then, it used to be like Charlie and friends would drive, and everyone else is like just turns up, and everyone else would be like 3 people. But now it's like a point where, and it's amazing how there's like so much for people to do. There's a whole team about people who have contributed to the community, contributed to making the game what it is, trained people, been trained, been shown commitment, and all these people have been given opportunities. And I just love the fact that there's a community around people I'm now friends with through what is reality like a train game on Roblox. And in the past, you'd be friends with them because you already knew them, whereas now the game's big enough that you can meet new people and, you know, laugh with people I've never thought I'd laugh with. And for me, that's like an amazing part of the game, is just being able to laugh with people, being able to have fun, do ridiculously stupid stuff, and just find it funny. And
Yeah.
for me, that's what I love most, is the community.
No, I think it's weird how far it's come since 2017, because I mean, first of all, if you know me, you know that I'm not actually a big train fan or know very much about trains at all, which is ironic. But to be honest, back in 2017, it was just, I knew Charlie from before, and I knew that my friend Charlie was making this game at Stepford County Railway. It's sort of picking up quite a bit, more so than kind of our previous ventures. But, you know, some of the scripting is quite basic. It's the same kind of systems that's in all the different kind of basic train games you get, that you can find in free models and things like that. But you could see the kind of the potential of where the game might go. But I think it's since surpassed that massively. And I just came on the game to help my friend basically fix some of the scripts and help it be a bit more kind of easier to expand and easier to grow and things like that. And then it's snowballed from there. Like in April of 2018, we released the big update 1.0.0, which was a complete rewrite of the game, kind of from the ground up. And to be honest, a lot of what's still in the game is from that sort of 4-month period where I just put in the hours and completely rewrote the game, and it's grown from there. But I mean, 16 million plays and stuff like that is just insane, absolutely insane.
HV, any thoughts?
So yeah, like all of these people are talking about like 2017, and I feel bad because I joined in like December 2019. But yeah, I joined SCR not really knowing anything about trains, so similar as Bentek. So I joined, I learned about how trains work, how like dispatchers and guards work with each other. And what kept me going is basically our community and the wonderful team of staff that we have, working with them, implementing changes, which is something I genuinely enjoy doing, and just making SCR an overall better place.
All right, thank you for that lovely answer, everyone. I want to tell for everyone there are a lot of questions right now, and we keep getting more and more questions every second. So we are still reading as much as possible, and we will try to answer all the questions as much as possible. However, if you still do have any questions, feel free to ask them in the YouTube or Twitch live chat, or you can use the events lounge. Then let's take a look at the next question, which is a long one. Do you guys plan on remaking the track models at all? Yeah, let's see. I like the simplicity, but given the new extremely detailed training current development, I think it would be nice to have them get a little makeover.
Yeah, so I saw this question. I think definitely we're going to be looking at the tracks. I think even just as part of the optimization and things that people are kind of after for making it work on mobile and lower end devices, I think the tracks are definitely a place where we have lots of parts and lots of things that contribute to that kind of lag with the textures and stuff like that. So I think for us, at least simplifying those and removing the amount of parts there are, because at the moment there's obviously the gravel and the 2 rails for every single bit of track. I think we're definitely going to simplify that, and my train movement system doesn't rely on any of Roblox physics, so it doesn't matter what shape or what kind of topologies on those. So we will definitely look into upgrading the track. What that will look like, I don't yet know.
The next question is from let's see where we there we Ragnar 2. Will keyboard shortcuts for different roles be added?
Absolutely. So I think as part of what we've been doing on the new signaling interface and stuff like that, I think also a lot of the updates we have planned on the roadmap are all about this kind of optimization, reaching more people, making it better to play on more devices, that kind of stuff. And so while I'm there making things a little bit nicer for mobile and a little bit nicer for gamepads and possibly Xbox, I obviously have the opportunity to then add other ways of triggering things on the computer, and I think keybinds are definitely popular with quite a lot of gamers. So we'll be looking at keybinds. The new signaling interface will have keybinds in it, as did the old one, but there's a lot more now to do a lot more stuff, and we'll definitely be extending that to dispatching and guarding, and we'll probably look at adding a few more keybinds to driving as well to interact with some of the pop-ups that you get.
Then there is a question: what was the reason that you all started SCR, and what are the ambitions for the future?
It's probably a me question, given I'm the one who started it. I think SCR was probably somewhere in the ballpark of my 250 something game on Roblox. I have made countless games on Roblox, and you will probably have heard of maybe one, because them games never went anywhere. They were always I'd always start doing one, and then I'd get distracted and go, actually, I want to do this instead. And I ended up making a little bit of lots of games. So I've made that many different train sim routes, that many different bus sim routes, all sorts. And Stepford, like I say, back when I did the 2012 one, was I wanted to make a train game. But at that time, I wasn't a great builder. I'd like to say I'm better now. But I couldn't do anything complicated. I was really struggling. And actually trying to redesign something that actually existed in real life was really difficult. And I wanted to try and do something a bit more practical, where I wasn't going to be kind of looking at something real and going, oh, this doesn't look right. I could kind of go from my own head. So that's why I did the original Stepford. I'd been playing lots of games by people like Ureb RBLX, and other kind of, at the time, game creators for train simulators that I loved, and I just wanted to be up there. I wanted to be able to do something like that. And Ureb and lots of other people did help me kind of with getting started. But again, that 2012 Stepford game became one of the many games that never went anywhere. And I left it, and I did loads of other stuff. And I made a game called Stepford Bus Simulator as well, which was one of the slightly more successful of my games, but again, didn't really go anywhere. And I decided at some point, actually, the whole Stepford franchise had been two of the games that I'd done that had actually been popular with people who played them, albeit there weren't many. So I thought, let's go back and do it again. And I stuck with it because a few of my friends helped me. So they wouldn't let me get distracted and go on to another project. We said, no, we're doing this. We're going to get something done. And that's basically what happened. Is once Stepford became popular, when we launched it in November, I realised that I was much better to focus on this one game than go and do loads of others. So that's what I did. In terms of my aspirations for the future of it, there's so much. When we started it, there was so much I wanted to do that I can't believe we've already done. Things like guards. We were the first. I'm going to regret saying this because someone will probably prove me wrong, but we were the first train simulator game on Roblox to do guards in the way that we did it, in terms of not just having a whistle or a bat that you hold. That is actually an actual integral part of driving the train. we were the first train simulator to really launch that, and I was really pleased with that because, as many of you will know, train simulators out there like Train Sim World and Train Simulator 2021 and all of them, they're great, but for me, they just have loads of things missing. You can't be a guard, you can't be a dispatcher, and I really wanted something that was more of an experience than just driving a train, because loads of people have made train driving games. We didn't need to be another one. We wanted to be unique. So my aspiration is that we keep making SCR an experience simulator. So we keep giving you more things that you can do beyond just driving a train. And we do it in a way that's multiplayer, so everyone can be in the same place and work together. So I love the idea of 4 people. You could have a train that's being driven by someone is guarding it, someone else in that game is dispatching it, and someone else is sat in a signalling control room. I love that one train has got all of them bits working together and everyone being able to do what they want. So that's why, and also what I love most about it, and that's what I want to keep doing. It's not just about more trains, more stations, all that. We could do that forever, but the game just gets laggier and too big. What I really want to focus on is how do we make it actually like a railway. So that's always been my intention.
The next question is from YouTube, from Gavin or Gavin Smith. Will dispatchers be able to see what trains are being guarded?
All right, I guess that's the question for me. So in the works, we're looking into remaking the dispatch GUI because sometimes the GUI may be in the way when you're dispatching. So the remaking of the GUI might look something. Actually, I don't really know what it'll look like, but there'll be more accessibility functions which demonstrates the head code, lateness, and also if there was a guard on board and the driver as well. So just a small remaking of the dispatching GUI is something we're looking into.
The next question is an interesting one for Charlie. How did you meet Bentek?
Well, again, I mentioned earlier that I started Roblox back in 2008. And actually, it's worth noting that while some of the people in the management team, the likes of The Hazard and Bentek, are all people I've known for a long time, I met everyone that I work on SCR with through Roblox. I don't have any kind of previous like real life friends from who I knew before Roblox times that have developed this with me or a part of this, which is what I really like about it. Actually, I've made a lot of friends through this game, and actually, it's, you know, everyone's always like, oh, don't talk to strangers, don't meet people online, and that is very safe and very true. And I definitely am not encouraging that. But at the same time, the people that I met Bentek on a game on Roblox back in, I think, probably 2008. It was in my first year. It was when I was trying to make my first train, and my idea in my head of making my first train was a free model train. It was one carriage, and I wanted to stick 2 carriages together. And back then, I had no idea how to do that. And Bentek was the one person who was in the server looking at the frantic wannabe famous person, me, going to all of the actual famous people going, how do I weld the train together? And them all laughing at me. He was the one person who kind of said, oh, I'll help you. Much to his regret, 12 years later, he's still helping me develop games. So yeah, thank you for not ignoring me 12 years ago.
You're welcome. I mean, it started with trains and ended with trains. It's done a nice little loop.
One quick note for everyone. If you do have a question, you can still ask them in the YouTube or Twitch channels or in the events channel. Please only ask your question once, because asking your question multiple times will not help with answering it faster. Then the next question. Let's see. Man, this is going so fast. Can we have different kinds of announcements where we can choose like social distancing, etc.? So will there be different kinds of announcements?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is something that people have suggested, and also, you know, our own team wanted it. I think Charlie wants this very much, which is, yeah, essentially manually triggered announcements. So they'll be pre-configured probably. There might be some settings, we'll see. But yeah, you'll be able to trigger announcements. You'll hear them, your passengers will hear them, and they will be on board. But as you can see on the roadmap, it's in the low priority section just because we've got kind of more pressing things with optimization and things like that. But it's one of those nice additions to the game that keeps things interesting. Like Charlie was saying, we can't just expand forever. We've got to make the experience that you've got within the map that we've got a little bit richer, and I think that's one of those features.
Then another question for you, or actually for everyone who's sometimes developing. What app did you use to make trains, to create them?
So our current developers who are working on the trains, they use, I think both of them use Blender, and Blender is a free 3D modelling program, and that is what we've used to make the 802 that you've seen, and the Class 707 that Aeroware's working on. And of course we're working on a few other trains in parallel at the moment that should come out pretty soon. And so that just allows you to kind of model a lot of the train as one big part with, you know, smooth edges, smooth corners, and really control the geometry much more than you could do in Roblox Studio with CSG.
I think another good thing to add there as well is that you'll notice the phrases next gen version 1, next gen version 2, and then the kind of unofficially next gen version 3, which is the Blender models that Bentek's been talking about, which is where we're currently at. You know, we're not saying that out of them three that there's one is much better or whatever, and that, you know, everyone says, oh, what about the old paper trains? They were rubbish. And no, they weren't. The paper trains were the way our game worked, and they were perfect for it at the time. We've just changed the way our game works. But one thing we've been really keen on is that we always adapt. So we started with paper trains, and that was really, really popular. But the next thing we wanted needed some form of interior for them to be working. So we then moved up to the next gen, which was a version of using unions. So just all done in Studio unions, and then sticking the texture from the old paper trains on the side of them. And then next gen version 2 was a slightly more optimized version in terms of it was less likely to have the textures fighting with each other, which you might see on some of the older trains. So, for example, the 321 is probably a good example of one of the ones that's quite bad for this. The textures fight each other quite a lot. So the newer next gen version 2, which we'd started to do, was around completely union trains. And then actually we got an opportunity to start looking at using Blender to have much more slick, optimized trains that were less blocky, but we still wanted to keep the Roblox effect. So there's loads of different ways that you can do train creation, and we can prove that because we can demonstrate about 3 or 4 different versions in the last 12, 20, 24 months that we've gone through.
Drives me mad with version control though. Having to support all the different things. But yeah, it's we're definitely improving them and we'll continue to do so.
The next question is for HV. From XST Gamer 412. With the new signaling system, how many desks will there be?
I think we're currently looking at around 6 or 7 desks. So with the desks, I'm also working with the HNSs to see how do we want to split the zones, how do junctions management work with the new system, but expect somewhere around 6 or 7, and it may or may not be scattered around the map this time.
A question from Ryan. How did you come up with the name Stepford County Railway?
So you're probably expecting a really philosophical answer behind this, but there really isn't one. A lot of the original Stepford names, some of these don't exist anymore, some of them still do, particularly on the Lynn line, these ones definitely, we used things like automatic place name generators online, which would kind of merge 2 random halves, so that's why you've got like Wester Coast, Starry Lock, they're all just random like halves of words put together, because at that point we had about 40, 50 stations and our brain power was struggling to make up new place names. But the honest answer is we just make them up for a lot. Some of them are inspired, very rarely though, we just make them up most of the time. Some of them might be inspired, but you'll notice that some of the station names match a member of the team. So, you know, Berrily, which was the first, even though it wasn't the first station to be released to the public, it was the first station that I built, both in 2012 and on the 2017 versions. That was inspired by Ureb. and there were other stations that were inspired. Bodin, particularly, inspired by a certain member.
I am very inspiring.
Well, questionable. But so the names were a mix of things. Stepford itself, that one word, was something random that came in my head. I'd seen lots of places that ended with Ford, and I just randomly came up with something, and I saw something that made it work. So I'm afraid there's no really philosophical answer. It was just a lot of making it up and then looking and going, would I actually see that on a UK railway network map of a real place? Obviously not a real place, but does it sound right, or does it sound too made up? So yeah, that's the answer for that one.
The next question, a question to my most favorite line. I'm wondering if there's coming a new or new express train or new express trains.
So in the next update, we don't have new trains in terms of as in a brand new train planned for Express. But you will have noticed that there are currently 4 trains on Express. If you compare that to the other operators, they're a lot lower. And the simple reason for that is that Express was the last operator we released. It's not actually that old compared to some of the others. So yes, we absolutely will be adding more trains to Express. Sadly, none yet in the 1.7 update. There's a few kind of cool features. You've probably seen the sneak peek from TPX, which should give you a bit of a clue about some of the stuff that's coming. In fact, there's a few sneak peeks from TPX that should give you a bit of a clue about what's coming. So we have been doing lots of work with Express as an operator, but actually we wanted to get it how we liked it before we just threw more trains at it. So yes, we do plan more trains, but we don't have an idea quite when they'll be introduced yet, or what trains they will be at this time.
The next question. Hey there, directors of SCR. Will you add more details on on the trains, like a delay announcement or what track we will proceed with to stop?
So, as we mentioned in terms of manual driver announcements, there will also be probably more automated things and improved announcements and stuff just in general around the game. In terms of the track question, I think that's a question of like where you're going at junctions and things like that. There's kind of a very real need for us to have a prediction of where you'll go based on traffic and based on maybe your destination, things like that, like predict where you'll go at a junction. That's kind of needed for quite a few different things, including like traffic management and signalling. But of course, when we develop a system like that, we will pass it on as kind of extra cosmetic information to the driver as well, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So yes is the answer, when is a different question.
Still a lot of questions coming through. The next one, will you ever consider making an optional livery setting? Like you can choose the livery for your train?
So I think this has been suggested a lot of times by a lot of people. And I think it's something that previously we've just not done because generally we've had a train on an operator and kind of just how the data works behind the scenes. But I think, when we replace all these trains with mesh trains, we then potentially have the opportunity to more easily switch things out and more easily have different versions of trains, because each train on its own will take up kind of less memory than they do currently. But I think the main drive is just to replace them all with mesh first, possibly give you a few new ones here and there, and then we can definitely look at kind of whether you can pick more options. A lot of people have asked for an option to make certain trains double and things like that. So we've heard you. It's on our minds, but it's not on the roadmap just yet.
The next question, why did you decide to make fictional operators and not operators based off real life?
So I think this probably links to a bit of what I've already said, but I've made lots of games that recreate real life, and the reality is all that happens is people criticize you for it not being perfect because they are comparing it to something it should be. which is just the reality. I mean, everyone knows how they react when a new train sim route comes out or a new map on a game they like that's a real place, and they go, this isn't right. And it's a lot of pressure because we have a building style. So if you look at the style we build in, we don't build realistic to the like tiny details. You know, we're not interested in recreating. Our game is an experience simulation, as I've said. It's not a detail. I'm not trying to recreate a railway as a real life thing. I'm trying to create the experience. So we balance detail with practicality. And as a result, we wanted to be able to kind of, well, firstly, we didn't want to be in a position where we're putting too much pressure on ourselves to recreate something specific. But also, I've been able to kind of go wild in terms of what I want to do with the game. I can do whatever I like because I can make as many stations. If I decide that I want to change the routes, I can do that. No one's going to tell me I can't because it's my game, it's my map. We decide what we want to do and we have full control over it. And the same with the operators. You know, there's no point making a completely random new map of somewhere that doesn't really exist and then putting an actual UK train operator in it, because again, you're trying to simulate something specific, whereas we wanted to create something that looked very real. So it looks like a UK train simulator, and you could probably put, if you sent the Stepford area map to someone who didn't really know geography very well, and you asked them if it was a real map of a UK train network, they'd probably say yes, because that was the intention. It was designed to replicate something that could be real. But we really liked the idea of having complete flexible control about what we do and how we do it. So I was always for inspired by real. So you'll see lots of our stations are very similar to real life ones, because actually, why reinvent the wheel when we've got something that works really well? But we didn't want to just recreate an existing simulator, because there's plenty of games that do that. So we thought, let's go out of the box, and to do that, we needed to kind of make it up rather than try and stick within. Let's recreate Thameslink, or let's do this. We wanted to do it completely fresh.
The next question, this one is asked a lot of times, and this one's for Bentek and for HV. And it's about Training 2.0, since a lot of people already know that it is coming, but the question is, when will we see it? Are there any plans already? And as soon as it's there for the signalers, are there any plans to update the trainings for the other departments as well?
Okay, so on the technical side and kind of when you might see it, it's kind of work in progress. We paused it temporarily for some of the 1.7 features, particularly the signaling interface, because that was very big, and just, you know, anything that you thought might take a week takes 4 and things like that. So there hasn't been any work on Training 2.0 since before the signaling interface bit started, when you started seeing posts from me about that. But it's very, very close. We've got a system set up that will do kind of an in-game quiz and record the result. It's just kind of hooking that up now to provide that as a gateway between stage 1 and stage 3. So between you achieving all the requirements before the quiz and then kind of adding yourself to the training queue. So that should be reasonably soon after 1.7 is released, definitely within the next kind of major update from 1.7, but possibly even released sooner. We'll have to see how it works operations wise as well. In terms of kind of future plans, I don't think there's too much in terms of technical stuff beyond 2.0. I think it will extend kind of from drivers, dispatchers, guards. We'll then extend it to signalling probably just shortly afterwards. We'll probably test it with the other ones. We'll extend it to signalling, and my plan is to make a kind of an assessment system for signalling that will kind of simulate traffic without having actual traffic in the game. So that's going to be a big job on its own. So in terms of technical stuff, I'm not promising anything beyond that, but I'll see if HV's got any operational stuff to add.
Yeah, so I'll dive into a little bit more of the operation stuff. So what we're looking for in Training 2.0 is for you to do the research. So we'll have all the guides, so how to dispatch, how to drive, how to guard, and all that stuff ready handy for you before the quiz. We'll also look into a video tutorial because, as I know, some of you, including myself, are more visual learners, and it's easier to see how the GUIs interact with each other if you see that in a video and in a live setting, as opposed to in the training and you just watch the host do what they do. So I think that training 2.0 will be good, and what it is to come I'm excited with, and I'm working with the line managers and the supervisors to see what changes could we make to make trainings more efficient and also more accessible for you guys.
A question for the development team. So this one is for you, Bentek. How did you learn to script something so complex? And yeah, for the people who want to know a bit more about it, do you have any piece of advice to if they want to start doing the same thing as you are doing?
Okay, so I get this question quite a lot in terms of people wanting to learn to script, in terms of how did I learn to script, that sort of thing. And there's a few kind of videos I've got on this as part of my podcast series Beyond the Blocks. But I learned over a very long period of time. Charlie mentioned meeting me on here in 2008. I think 2010 was probably when I started doing kind of some proper scripting and trying to make my own games and things like that. And from there I've done web development and computing courses and various other things throughout my life. So it's been a slow process. There was nothing driving me to kind of urgently learn scripting. Roblox wasn't a platform where you earned money or anything like that back when I started learning. So it was just a hobby for me. Now, obviously, when I tell people it took me 10 years to get to this level, suddenly that puts them off. I don't think it has to take you that long, but I think you just need to use tutorials, use documentation, look at things like Alvin Block's, his tutorials, that sort of stuff, and really just appreciate that you're not going to get it straight away. But, the best things in life are kind of through perseverance and stuff like that. So you just have to have one of those mindsets of, I'm not going to stop trying to make this thing work until it works. And that's how I've got to where I am, and it's how most of the kind of complicated features in SCR have come about. As definitely with the train system, I think there was months before version 1.0, and even after that with some of the updates where things just would not work, and back to square one 10, 12 times. But that's how you end up learning the stuff that you need to learn to then make the one that works. So that's my advice for you anyway.
The next question is one for Charlie, but of course, if any of the directors want to answer something, go ahead. Have the directorate explored the possibility of moving off the Roblox platform to a standalone game, like on, for example, Steam?
Yeah, I mean, that question comes up quite a lot. We get asked, why use Roblox? Surely Roblox is not the best for this kind of thing. You could do something more creative separately. And actually, again, I think the big reason that SCR has been a success, and I'll let Bentek chip in here from a techie point of view, but from my point of view is that the whole reason SCR is a success is because of the community we have access to. Whatever you think of Roblox as a platform and whatever downfalls it has, there are millions of people that we have access to. So just, if our regular players play, our games end up on the front pages and end up in the recommendeds. And then new people who aren't even that necessarily interested in trains, but they like having a go at something new, will come along and then they'll tell their friends if they like it. And it's given us a real kind of ability to reach out to more people and be more successful as a game and have a community like this. The whole way of marketing something, if you do it completely separately on Steam, is much more challenging because you've got to know how to reach out to people. You can't just go, here's a game, play it. Whereas with Roblox, you've got targeted marketing. So if you play one train simulator game on Roblox, it'll generally show you some others while you're there. You can find the right people. So even just from a kind of engagement point of view, there's that. And Roblox kind of gives us what we need it to right now. There's obviously bits that hold us back, but time and effort to basically create a whole game in itself, rather than use a pre-existing editor that even someone like me who's not very tech savvy can get the hang of and start building with. And like I say, it's taken since 2008 for me to learn to build the way I currently do, and the same applies to a lot of the development team. That's just through constant practice, and it's through having a very user-friendly tool. Something separate makes it a lot more complicated.
Yeah,
Well, you have to have your own servers and stuff, wouldn't you? You have to have your own servers, your own engine, your own maintenance. Like,
yeah, exactly. Like from
creative
a
freedom, but it's like you've got to do it yourself.
yeah, from a technical and like business side, it does make sense. But I suppose it's kind of two questions really. Why did it start on Roblox, and why is it still on Roblox? So I mean, the start on Roblox is also, as I said when talking about starting in 2017, we didn't expect it to be a big game, or like, you know, maybe you expected a few people to play it, but you definitely didn't expect it to be something that had the kind of following that we do, the kind of community we do, and that sort of thing. So that's why it probably started on Roblox. But I think also, as Charlie said, it's a very accessible platform. It's very, very useful in terms of the marketing, in terms of the business, in terms of the fact that we've had nearly 1 million unique players driving in SCR, which is absolutely insane. I think we'd have to do a lot more work and put a lot more money and time into it to get to those kind of levels outside of this. We haven't put a single penny into the game in terms of marketing and things like that. It has just been the word of mouth that Charlie's on about. And also just Roblox is a very good platform to do what we wanted to do, which is something different, because yeah, Train Simulator already exists and things like that, and you know, you could go away and make another one of those, but it's already there. I think what we have, our advantage, our edge, is the fact that it's multiplayer by default, that everyone does all these different roles, that there's a lot of interaction and stuff that you don't see in some of those other off-platform train simulators, and there's, you know, kind of a reason for that. Roblox is just built with socializing and multiplayer in mind from the start, rather than it being an afterthought or extra effort and things like that. So there's kind of the community side of it. There's the kind of the fact that a lot of us are here as a hobby and kind of do it part time, and wouldn't necessarily have the time needed to do it off platform. The fact that we've had kind of 10 years on the platform and know quite a lot about it, and not having to learn new tools and stuff like that. And also just, yeah, the business side is it just all makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Well, if we had to move off, we'd have to literally start again where we are 2017.
Yeah, that as well.
We could give you more stuff on the platform that may have its limitations, but then on the other hand, building like a bespoke platform, which could be everything we wanted, but then still need 3 years of work to get back to get back to where we are right now. And you know, in that 3 years, there's so much more that could be done, that we can do here, even if it's limited by what Roblox and their platform determines.
Then I have a question from Simulation Nerd, and he asks, what is the status on the passenger information screens inside the trains that right now only say, welcome aboard Stepford Connect?
So for those, they're definitely something that we've wanted for a while in terms of those saying something. I mean, you'll see kind of hints of this in a lot of things we do. We think very far ahead, but generally save the cosmetic things for later and do the big stuff first. But I think we are going to push and try and get a...
In the meantime, can we just continue, or...?
Let me just have a look.
I believe we're back.
Working.
Okay, I think it dropped for a moment, but I can see that it's back up now, so in a few moments it should be back and synchronized with everyone. I think if anyone just missed what I'd said, basically just that we're trying to get the internal boards done either in this update or very soon after patch, and we'll continue to like upgrade those and add more features along the way once we've got a framework in place, and that kind of a similar thing applies to quite a few other little placeholders we've got, separate door buttons and things for passengers. We kind of leave cosmetic stuff like that until we've done the big things in terms of optimization and things like that, but we will try and slip in a few of those each kind of major update that we have.
The next question is, can you add an off indicator to all stations?
Yeah, so I mean, Charlie can probably answer in terms of being the one who actually went round and adding things to various different stations. So yeah, I'll let you have that one, Charlie.
Yeah. Yes is the answer. It just takes a bit of work for me to go around and work out where we haven't got them. We originally added them at every station where there was a guard. Every station where there was a dispatcher, because they were the people using them. What we kind of forgot was that when we introduced guards, was that they were then needed everywhere. So the majority, if not all stations, will get off indicators. And as part of the upgrade works that we've done in this update, any station that we've overhauled, of which you'll see in the sneak peeks, there's been quite a few. Again, I may live to regret this, but I'm pretty confident that we have fitted off indicators anywhere we've overhauled a station. And at some point we will go back and retrofit. So yes, they're not missing for any particular reason other than just there's about 60 stations in SCR, and every individual platform needs one fitting and then wiring up to the signals. So it just doesn't take long, but it's a slow task. So they will get them. It's just taking me a bit of time to work around the network. But yes, they are going to get them.
The next question is for the Hazard 9 from City User, and he asks,
no.
do you have any new community engagement projects in the works?
Well, we had a plan. Some people have seen it. I've been blessed to see all the crazy ideas that both myself, Dooge, Charlie, and Jive sort of worked to bring together. And some of them include we want to be more of a presence around people. It feels like sometimes it might feel, even as far as like supervisors and other managers, it felt in the past we'd just like sit up in this high office looking down over everyone. And so on one level, we'd like to work with the people who make stuff happen, and that's supervisors. On another level, we also want to work and be more around and engaging with the community, players, content creators. But we had I think it was Joshy did a 10-hour stream of SCR, poor guy, last week. And that's amazing, the fact that people are dedicated enough to want to, or unlucky enough to lose a bet, whatever it is. But content creators doing work, showing off the work we've done. And I think we need to, part of my plan is to work with them to make more content and also expand both our audiences, because I think there's a cooperation there, and it's in both our interests, I think, to work with people who can also themselves reach audiences that we might not have. And that sort of growth, bringing more people into what SCR is something I want further as community director.
It's why we changed the, when I sat down and talked to the Hazard about the director's team and how we change it. Everyone knows we change the job titles quite a lot, and that's not just because we feel like it. There's always a reason behind it. I just I've always wanted to get the team to be the best it can be. Why am I here? Well, good question. But the kind of people and relations side of things was always very focused on just our people, our teams, and the people in the group. And actually, the whole idea of the community directorate, which will be starting to change, is how do we reach out further? So that's why I've asked the Hazard to try and come up with this plan about how do we engage with people like YouTubers, how do we engage with people who do streams, whatever they may be. Joshy's was a great example because that got a lot of attention, and it's shown that actually that there's really good stuff going on, and actually why are we not engaging with them people to make it happen more and showcase our game? And so yeah, absolutely, the whole idea for when I wanted us to rethink the team that the Hazard now leads is how do we think more about the community, not just the people that we see all the time. So we're just starting a lot of that work, but I'm really looking forward to how some of them plans unfold.
Mm-hmm.
A question from Mr. Wheels03. Some trains have been removed in previous updates. Any chance that we will see them back?
Generally, as a rule, we hate removing trains because we know people have either bought them with points or Robux, whatever they were, for a reason. They wanted them trains, so we never want to remove something. And anytime we've removed a train, we've always tried to replace it with something similar. So, for example, we removed the 701 on Waterline many, many moons ago, which actually, now that the 701 is a real thing, that 701 doesn't look that much like a 701. It's nothing like what the reality one is because it was made based on concept art. And we replaced it with a 730 because the 730 was more suited to Waterline. So we've removed things generally, but to replace them with something else is always, we always like to try and give something back. And we know that sometimes people actually preferred what the train model that was there before. So long term, yeah, we'd like to try and bring everything back, but we can't always bring them things back, and it depends what we want to do with them. But like we may bring back a 701 for a different purpose in the future, for example. But yeah, the reason we remove a train is usually because we want to add something, and it would be bizarre to have both of them things. Like it would have been bizarre to have a 701 and a 730 on Waterline because they're so similar in terms of they're both the same family of train. And the 701 was just too big for that kind of operator. It was 4 cars, but it was incredibly long. It really fell out of place. So we've only ever removed something because we weren't happy with it in that place. But we generally don't like removing things. One, from a practicality point of view, and 2, because every time we remove something, we realise we've taken something away from people, and we don't want to do that ever. So I can't promise that yes, we'll bring back everything that we've removed in the past, but generally we don't remove trains just because we feel like it. There's always a big decision behind it, and me and Bentek go through a lot of conversations before we just take something away.
All right, we still have a lot of questions left, so that means we are now closing the acceptance of new questions, but we will still try to answer as many questions as possible, so just stay here. The next question is from Afro Boy, and he asks, where do you get your inspiration for station, scenery, and train liveries?
That's a nice one. I like this one. I like this question.
We just saying that you like the question, not that you wanted to contribute to it.
No, I will contribute to it. It's a good question because basically what happens is, for me anyway, I think sort of about what's missing. Like, so to start on a scenery perspective, which is part of what makes a station. What makes a station is what's around it. There's no point having an amazing station. You've got to have significance to it. So I sort of think on like, this is like my notes part 1 of 20, by the way. It's gonna be a long one, but it's like what makes the environment that you're around. Is it a small town? Is it a large city? Is it a commuter belt? The people, like, is it a tiny little station that serves 4 people? So part of what makes a good station is the environment around it, and the inspiration for that sort of comes from just looking through like the world. Like, I mean, I've personally trawled through too many street views around stations and seeing what's around it. Like the station Wester Coast, that was inspired by like a small town like 10 miles away from where I lived, and I was like, and there was something unique to it, and I think that's what you've got to capture with every station, something unique in every, and then that's what makes places memorable. And so whenever I build, I try and do something that's original while inspired by something else, and while also offer something unique. You've got to give people a reason to drive there, a reason to go there, a reason to dispatch there. So that's what I try and capture in a station.
Yeah, I think I'd echo most of that. I mean, there's like 2,500 stations in the UK, so there's plenty of inspiration to go from. And I think that actually the reality is that there's always some kind of inspiration out there for us to follow. So my kind of method of thinking is, I think how many tracks, how many platforms do I want? Do I want island platforms? Do I want outer platforms? Do I want fast tracks, etc.? And then my next step is to go and look for stations in the UK that have that layout. And then we tend to think about it as a team. Which ones do we like? Me and the Hazard will talk about it loads in terms of which one do we think suits it best. And then we start recreating that station, but we don't recreate it exactly. So we start to recreate it. We go for the vibe. So I'll use the Wester Coast example. We tend to go with the vibe. So the town area is very, very based on that station. But we don't recreate that station exactly as is. We kind of add something unique to it, like the tunnels at the end of the platform don't exist in real life to that station, but we wanted it to fit in and there's not a viaduct at the other side. So we take bits and bobs from different stations and mix them together. But we start with an idea of one station that we think that'll suit that design well, and then we start to build it, and then we kind of go a bit off track as we go along and start throwing in all sorts of extra ideas. So all sorts can contribute to a station idea, but generally we're inspired by existing rather than trying to make something up when there's loads of inspiration out there.
The next question was asked a lot. What are you most proud of in SCR, and were there any moments where you thought, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done this, or this was a bad idea, something like that?
Interesting.
Many.
I think one of the Charlie's bad ideas is sat in the form of community director, but
You mean hiring?
The it's a really good question, because I mean, in terms of what I'm most proud about, I can't really give one answer for that. I just love everything about it. I mean, there's bits that drive me up the wall, and there's
Aye.
aspects that maybe don't go great, and that we get into all sorts of weird situations that I didn't want that come alongside the aspect of being a popular game. But at the end of the day, we have a game that's had millions of visits on it that I never thought I'd ever achieve, which is crazy. We have a community with thousands of people, literally thousands, and it amazes me to say that I sit and make a game that thousands of people play, and that we have a group with 80,000 people in it on Roblox, and the thousands of people in Discord, and it's immense, the engagement on it, and it's just so nice to be able to have done something that people enjoy, and that's it for me. It's the fact that people come to SCR, and some people be critical, and that's absolutely fine. We're always looking for advice and for feedback and the likes, but I just love seeing people enjoying the game, and that's the biggest thing for me, particularly during the last few months where the world's been a bit of a rubbish place. It's why we did the sale that we did at the start of the COVID outbreak, and we knew people were going to be stuck at home, and we didn't want people to feel isolated. And I personally have found having the community the one thing that's got me through lockdowns and not being traveling and everything, because I talk to these people all the time, and that's why I've tried to
people going through the same stuff as you.
Exactly, and I've tried to get involved in more engagement stuff that's been happening, and just seeing the people out there. So for me, the proudest bit is just the community and the game and how successful it is. I can't put one thing on it. And the other bit is, yes, there's bits that we've gone, oh, that we didn't really want that to happen, and there's some things that are disappointing. We try and keep control about how we share stuff with people, about announcements and stuff, and sometimes people don't like the way we do that, and why have you held an update back when it's ready? We don't just sit on an update because we don't want to share it. Generally, we just want to give you guys something to be excited about, and we want to get it right, because the last thing we ever want to do is share something that's not going to work.
Well. Yeah.
Exactly. So yes, there's always going to be bits that we don't like, but they're little bits, and they're generally not for very long. For me, I just love everything about it. It's just I'm so glad it's where it is now.
Yeah.
And,
I think.
Sorry, go first.
I think
you do more than I do.
To answer the question of what I'm proud of in the game and stuff like that, I think for me as an engineer and someone who thinks in systems and stuff, like for me the signaling system is something that I think separates us quite a bit. Obviously we've added more things such as the dispatching and guarding and stuff, but I still think the signaling system, even more so with some of the updates that I've done to it to improve it, that for me is awesome, because it works most of the time and there's 1,000 signals around the map, and just kind of the data, the systems on that, and the signals contribute absolutely nothing in the grand scheme of things to the lag and any performance issues that you're having. They generally render and stuff like that. So I think the signaling system's definitely my most proud thing, and the thing that I've probably spent most time on. And I think just sort of similar to what Charlie said in terms of the thing we never want to do is release an update that's like broken, it doesn't work, and have to take it back and disappoint people. I think the kind of the biggest disappointment we had was probably rolling back our streaming update and things like that, because obviously people are very hyped up for performance improvements in particular. So I think for me, yeah, that's what I'm most proud of, and I think just going forward we're just going to keep doing what Charlie says basically, and just developing updates that people are interested in.
Yeah, I mean for me it's like there's always two sides, because I of course still do a bit of development, and for me it's great to see a concept go from like a dodgy drawing on the back of like a notepad to a workspace that's cluttered, and then to finally evolve it into something that you can see and something that you can put in the game. Like some of the stuff that I've worked on, it's been the first bit I worked. So when I first started with SCR, for example, I wasn't here to build. Well, the first thing I did, I spent like months on building Western codes because I wanted to contribute something into the game, and to see that go from like in reference images to the bridge, and then to the station, and then to like the town around it. And for me, it's seeing the fruits of your labor, seeing people in the chat go, "Hey, this is like, I love this station. It's sick. That's brilliant. Like, I'm glad you can enjoy it. I love going through that station. Like, so it's so nice to have people grateful for the work you do and people enjoying the work that's been made. There's some really good, talented people in the development team, and I think it's great that we have a community to share that work with. And these are people that we've mostly met through our own game, through people contributing with like the community, and then going, "Hey, I can do this." And then seeing new builds come in, it's been great, and I think that's why I live for that. To be fair, just seeing concepts come to reality from loads of talented people, I think it's brilliant.
This question was asked a lot. Do you guys have any plans on adding a weather system?
Yes, I've seen this question quite a lot. The answer is primarily no, and the reason for that is that I think it would kind of be a very far in the future thing if we were. We definitely don't want to add more things that could worsen performance until we've improved some of the other aspects of the game. So I think for us, weather is one of those cosmetic things that probably comes after a lot of the other interaction. Things like boards on board the train that are working and showing the next stops and things like that are probably much higher up the list than things like weather, and are also much easier to achieve without much impact on low-end devices and mobiles and things like that. So I think weather would be very far down the line if that's something that we'd implement in terms of visual weather.
It's one of the features that we'd really like to see in terms of it'd look great, and we can visualize how we'd like it to work and all this, that, and the other. But at the end of the day, it adds nothing to the game experience, to the gameplay, other than it's a nice feature. And if we end up making the gameplay slower or laggier for just one of them features, then we're not achieving anything. If we're going to add something that's going to make the game slightly slower, then we want it, and it's got to be something that's worth adding. Otherwise, we don't want to risk making performance any worse than it is for any low-end computers, particularly. But everyone, why make performance worse for a nicety like rain? It's yes, we'd love it. So in terms of whether we'd like to see it, absolutely. But exactly what Bentek said, it's one of these things where we've got to get the game to a place where the performance is spot on before we start adding features that just don't actually change the gameplay experience and how you play the game, other than something you look at. But it's a good question.
The next question is about something on the public roadmap that has been on there for quite some time. For everyone who doesn't know, you can find a roadmap with all the future plans of the development team in the useful links. And people want to know more about the disruption events. Is anything to tell about that?
I mean, I'll say what it is in my head in terms of what I want to achieve, and then I'll see if Bentek has anything to add. But it's very, we haven't started work on this. It is on our priorities. For me, it's the one thing I really want to see. But it is another one of them things, a bit like weather, that's a bit of an experience thing, but it does have an impact on the gameplay. So it's more up there than weather, for definitely. But it also is something that we've got to be careful that we don't impact gameplay. So we know things like disruptive events and the likes, how some people won't want that, so we need to make sure we do it in a way that doesn't ruin the gameplay for some people, just so that others can do something more real. But for me, the goal is, as I said at the start, this is a railway experience simulation, and the reality is all sorts of things go wrong on the railway and they add to the whole experience. We want to look at things like how we better manage delays. So do we have announcements at stations for when trains are delayed? How you may have seen delay propagation on the roadmap as well, which most people probably don't understand what it means. But the idea of if a train arrives at its destination late, then it leaves late as well. So if it arrives 10 minutes late, it goes back out 6 minutes late. That kind of thing. So we end up with a railway that you don't get a train that's been arrived at its destination half an hour late, but then it goes back out on time, because that's just not realistic. So there's loads of stuff that we want to achieve with disruption, but the overall goal is how do we make it a better experience. But I don't know if Bentek wants to add anything, but it's still, we haven't really done much on that front yet.
Yeah, so I think it's another one of those things that will enrich the experience kind of within the map that you've got and get more out of it. So I think it's one of those features that in some ways is quite hard to implement. It depends what it is, but where possible, I've left things open to allow us to do that. But yeah, as you said, there's no progress on it at the moment, but it's definitely something that both we internally and other people want.
The next question, how long does it take to create a new train for SCR, and is it difficult to create one?
So the trains, I mean, I'm speaking on behalf of the developers who are doing it now, but there is also a bit that I do. They can take quite a bit of time in terms of getting it right, and I think the developers that we've got now in terms of overhead wires and airware are both quite kind of careful to make sure that the geometry is as best as it can be on their trains. So I think that's where a lot of the time is spent. And then obviously we've got our brand designer making some very, very nice liveries, and those also, take a bit of care and time to implement. And then you've got things like making it compatible for guards, making it work with the sounds and the train data, kind of how much is it going to be unlocked for, all that sort of stuff, and that setup in terms of the custom physics takes a little bit of time. So I think probably at the most you'd be looking at maybe 1 or 2 trains a month in terms of like very new things. But obviously we are quite strategic in terms of our use of trains that are similar classes. So the 802, the 801, the Electro Stars, that kind of thing. Families of trains make it a little bit quicker.
The next question is for HV. Are there any plans for dispatchers to be able to choose their platforms they want to dispatch at?
So yeah, so going back to the dispatch GUI, I think that one thing we'll work on regarding the dispatching system is adding the option for the players to choose their own platforms. It won't come out in 1.7, but it's something we're looking to for maybe a future patch after 1.7 to make dispatching experience a little bit better because it falls short compared to guards.
The next question, we recently got a new and beautiful announcer voice, but who is it?
Yeah, so some people have already realised, and this is a really good an example of something that I'm really proud of. Is we wanted to do this properly. When we replaced the announcements, we wanted to go all out. So we looked at whether there was someone in our team that we could use, and there were a few examples but we didn't think we were going to quite get the professional quality. So we did a bit of reaching out, and for the more observant of you, you'll notice that the voice that we currently have is the official voice of Great Western Railways trains. So we thought, actually, if we're going to get an onboard announcer, let's see if we can get a real one. And we didn't think we were going to find an actual train announcer that we could get on our trains. We thought I could never imagine having a game with an actual train announcer from a real operator on it. That just sounded far fetched. But yeah, so we were really, really pleased that we could work with the lady who does the Great Western Railway announcements to get a realistic experience. And she was great at coming up with loads of ideas. And we've got some other, as Bentek's mentioned, some really cool features we can add to the onboard announcements that we've already worked with her on. So yeah, really glad that we got to do that. And it was a really good investment in how do we make SCR an actual railway experience.
A question, more questions about sound. Will there be a better sound system for the trains?
Absolutely. So if you have a look at the roadmap, it is, I think it's on there. If it's not, it should be. But yes, we're absolutely working on a new kind of improved train sounds. It'll involve improving all of them because it'll be an entirely new system in terms of sounds. There'll be less delay between kind of the throttle changing on the train and other people hearing the change in sounds and that sort of thing. And particularly for some of the more complicated train sounds, it should work much better than it does. But that is coming kind of in the future. It's not close to being done yet, but it hopefully will be pretty soon in the next major update.
And the next question is, will the Pantograph feature ever be added?
And that's another one. I mean, Charlie has been working hard to help with the physical side of it, haven't you, Charlie?
Yeah, so you'll see that the more every update, and this next update is by far no exception to that rule. You'll see more and more overhead wires going up, but we won't touch the pantograph until we've got the overhead wires up. My aspiration is we get at least one operator fully wired from end to end, and then we'd want to look at how many of the trains, how easy it is to get all of the trains in that operator as a good test subject. But there's loads of work to think about on that one in terms of the different types of trains, and but yes, moving pantographs as in going up to the wires is definitely something we want, and it'll hopefully really nicely link into that disruption thing we talked about in terms of, you know, even simple things like the pantograph coming down mid journey and you having to put it back up again because it stops your train. You know, that kind of thing that happens in reality. Not often, thankfully, but yeah. So you'll see more in this update that we're getting more and more wires up. In fact, I've done loads in this update. So yes, when we get more of them up, we'll start introducing that. So it's something that we definitely want to do, and hopefully quite soon.
The next question, how did the current lockdown affect the rate of the game's development?
I think we definitely saw a peak during some of the lockdown. I mean, for most of us, it didn't mean that we were we were still doing university, still doing work, that sort of stuff. It was just from home, so you potentially save a bit of time in commuting and things like that. But I definitely saw kind of a spike over summer in terms of how much effort and time we put into the game and stuff. And that will hopefully show when you see 1.7, all the stuff that we've done.
Let's see the next question. Do you plan to replace the text-to-speech platform announcements with a human voice as well?
Yes. That's all I can tell you right now. Yes. It's in my head, working out how we do it. But yes, absolutely. We did it with trains, like as you've seen, and I want to do it with platforms as well. So don't quite know when yet, but yes.
The next question is a bit more personal and a bit less SCR related, but you guys, of course, have a game, SCR, Stepford County Railway. But how often do you guys travel on the train in real life?
I mean, I'll start because I work for a train company. So if you ignore lockdown, I travel on trains every day, the full length of the country quite frequently. So, and even when I'm not working, I'm a proper train geek. So I love train travel. It's my favorite thing to do. I don't like going abroad very much. I'd rather travel the UK because I like train travel over going on a plane. Just my preference. So I'd much rather travel somewhere new in the UK. So yeah, that's why I have an insanely ridiculous knowledge of different train stations and stuff, is because I just travel constantly. So I've missed that recently, but yeah, I for one travel all the time.
I think in stark contrast, I actively avoid trains, but I don't travel on them very much. But obviously, I do sometimes if we need to get somewhere or if we're meeting up and things like that. So I've been on quite a few, definitely while I was at university. There's some very loud cars outside. While at university and stuff, definitely I've travelled on quite a few trains, but I've not experienced anywhere near as many as some of the other ones in this call.
No, I mean, I sort of use train. I mean, trains are handy, like for me, but apart from when I interrailed, don't really use trains much. Interrailing was a lot of fun though. That was a lot of fun. More for the places rather than the trains, but because it's Europe, the trains are mostly on time. So the only late train I had was in the United Kingdom. So make your mind up.
For me personally, I don't really travel on trains because
Trains exist.
Well, I don't live in the UK, so you can't blame me for that. And North American train system kind of bad, just like an Amtrak. But yeah, usually I travel more on planes, I guess, because it's just cheaper and more efficient compared to the European train system.
The next question, will the lounge at Stepford Central, the empty lounge, will that ever be filled in?
Well, wait and see. There's some exciting stuff in the update, and I'm not going to reveal too much. But yeah, wait and see for 1.7.
You kind of have to blame Bentek for that one because he already revealed it. In his
Oh yeah, I forgot someone can't stream properly without
You,
leaking what I've been working on. All right, yes, there is stuff in there now.
Yeah, you don't have to drop me in it, but yeah.
I thought that was answered quite nicely until he just like he just threw. Oh, there's the boss. Yep, go under. Thank you.
The next question: what do you guys think about people making videos, or making screens, or making awesome content about SCR on YouTube and Twitch, etc.?
Pick me. I know. Pick me. Yep. I think it's great, and as I said earlier, that's something that, as being community director, that's something we want to work with more. Because those people are a huge part of why our game has the reach it does, and I think working with them more and in a better way, in a closer way, to maximize what both of us can do as a content creator and as a game, I think would be really exciting. So I'm hoping we can do that more in the future, and that's something we're going to actively work towards, is building connections with content creators and growing for the better.
The next question: do you plan on making more stations in tunnels?
Quite an interesting, specific question. No, is the short answer. We're at a point where we don't want to just keep expanding the map forever and ever. We want to get the map to a kind of complete state at some point, so we can make a final map, so we can start focusing on optimization and trains and all of the other features. If we keep extending the map, we're just going to make the situation worse. So we're happy at where we've got now. There's a few little bits to go, but we're kind of happy. And while I know some people really like the underground aspects and the tunnels aspects as well, we've already got the Airport West section. We've already got the terminals in tunnels. Leighton City in tunnels. So I know that people have asked for that, but I think there's no real need to do that. We lose the ability to do some creative stuff with scenery. So no immediate plans, but you never know. But at the moment, no plans.
The next question: in the future, will the signaling system let you be able to control the points and which platform you want that train to go into?
I think this is a classic question. I think it's one of those things where I mentioned a little bit earlier in the stream about wanting to predict where you're going to go at junctions, wanting to maybe like pre-allocate platforms and things like that, potentially have platform change announcements, all that really cool stuff that comes from having prior knowledge of where a train might go and updated knowledge of where it will go. I think the problem with having it on the signalling side of things is that that potentially is very confusing with certain junctions. There'll obviously be ones where you could send the train completely the wrong way, and that will result in an error and you'll get ejected from the train and things like that. So I think if it would be added to signals, it would have to be very, very careful. So we have no plans yet of making junctions manually controlled, but we'll definitely look into telling the signaller where you might go so that they can adjust the signals accordingly.
Then there is a question: will there be any new driver uniforms?
I think it's it's one of those things where you if you know our brand head of brand design, you'll know that he wouldn't let us get away with not having new uniforms for things, especially with some of the branding items you've seen in sneak peeks.
Yeah, there was a particular clue dropped earlier today, I think, that yeah, if there's anything that's been drawn that wasn't by our head of brand design, at some point I'm sure we'll replace it. So yeah, some exciting stuff to look forward to on that front.
The next question: how did you get the training system to work?
So I think this is sort of quite a technical topic, but if you've seen some of the 1.6 mini-series that I started, I've got some problems just due to the road noise and things outside, which has stopped me from recording and streaming a bit more. But I plan to finish off that series, and if you watched the last one, it said that the next one would be about kind of that system and how it works. But we use Amazon Web Services for the kind of the back end of it, and DynamoDB for the database. So I think I'm going to get a video out on that at some point. We'll see when I get a good opportunity.
All right, now we have time for one final question. Now that there is a new HNS, new head of network signaling, what do you believe the projections of the signaling department will be? So, how do you think the signaling department will grow in the future?
I guess I should answer it for every single department because everyone matters. So I'll start off with the signaling department since that was the one asked. So for the signaling department, I think that with training 2.0, there will be a new influx of members into signaling role and just being more accessible to the others. So I'm also working with the new heads of network signaling and also Bentek to label out zones for signaling, the new signaling system, how it's going to work, etc. And the new meetings basically give us more of an insight of how we can execute on the things that you want to see. And I think that that is a good way forward. And I think that the same could be applied for other departments. So you guys bring up changes that needs to be made. So a new dispatching GUI, as I mentioned earlier, for example. So I think that having that communication between us, the managers, and the community is a great way for us to continue to grow the game and also grow it to the way that you guys would like it to be.
Yeah, I think it's... sorry. I was just going to say that I think we mentioned it earlier a couple of times in terms of the signaling system is one of our kind of unique selling points about the game. It's one of the things that sets us apart along with guards and things like that. So I think just developing that further, helping more of you get into the role, making it a little bit more automated and a little bit less involved and open to non-Discord users and stuff like that is all part of the master plan of making everything accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and I think the first thing I'd say before you ask any more, well, obviously questions ready, but before you ask questions in general about what more we'll do with the signaling system, just wait for 1.7, because actually, I don't think he's quite blown his own trumpet enough on this one, but the overhaul of the signaling that Bentek has been doing is really exciting. I already loved our old signaling system, but when I look at what's in the game right now compared to what we're going to get, there's barely any comparison. It is a huge improvement. It's something to really look forward to. And there's some really cool features that, not just with the desks, but there's all sorts of other cool things that we're looking at that will make the whole experience for signalers and everyone around just much better. And that's just the start. There's loads more. But yeah, because it's one of our unique things, that doesn't just mean we're going to go, great, we've got signaling, no one else has it like we do. That's fine. We're just going to keep making it better every time we can, to the point where it's optimized and works the best. If we've got it as a unique selling point, we want to make it the best it can be. Just wait to see what we bring in 1.7 before you ask anything else about what else we can do with the signaling system, because I think you'll be really surprised at how much better this really is going to be.
And with that, I think it's time to stop with the questions. It was amazing to fire all these questions towards you, and I think now it's time for you all to take over.
Thank you very much, Juge. Thanks for being the question master there. It helped a lot. Massive thanks to the mods and the supervisors as well for going through all the questions and helping to pull them out for Duge as well. And thank you for all of your questions. Obviously, we didn't get through absolutely everyone, and we had to cut them off a little bit ago and just plough through that big list. But there's just seeing you all interested in the game, asking questions, and obviously finding out all those answers from us is really inspiring in terms of what we want to do, and seeing your reactions to some of our answers as well. Very, very helpful, motivating, and hopefully you enjoy what we're delivering pretty soon. So thank you for tuning into the stream. Hopefully we can do more things like this in the future, and we'll see you around in the community. So bye from us.
Cheers.
Bye,
Cheers,
everyone.
dude. Thank you, everyone.
See ya all.